Hearing now the bleak and unbearable world thou art base and debauched as can be.
Not so long ago, in the village of La Mancha, lived a man named Alonso Quijano, who read books about chivalry so passionate. He had lost himself in his books and imagined himself as a knight. Don Quixote de la Mancha, protector of the realm. He named his old horse Rocinante and went riding to the village of El Toboso. He there came into an inn he thought was a castle, and demanded to be served the finest of gifts. The innkeeper he imagined as the king gave him a woman in order to be pleasured. But Don Quixote refused and said that the most finest gift was to be made a knight. Though confused, the innkeeper obeyed. And asked money for his service. But Don Quixote disagreed and said, "Knights do not pay," and was kicked out. Being unable to stand, he was helped by the innkeeper's daughter. Upon seeing her, Don Quixote thought she was a princess and swore his love and service to Dulcinea del Toboso. On his search for adventure, he came across his neighbor Sancho Panza and invited him to be his squire. And in return, he shall receive an island of his own. Due to such promise, Sancho agreed to serve him, and the two journeyed together. In their journey, they saw an old structure, and upon seeing such, Don Quixote was filled with rage. He said to Sancho, "Alas, an ogre is in front of us," as he pointed to the old structure. Sancho was confused and begged to disagree. But the Don could not be persuaded. He then charged forward and collided with the structure, causing him to fall. As his body was caught by the ground, Sancho ran towards him and helped him to stand. To his surprise, Don was still smiling and exclaimed, "The beast has been defeated." After their series of adventure, Don Quixote longed for Dulcinea and ordered Sancho to send her his message of love. Sancho did not want to leave him, fearing that he might get into trouble, but obeyed him anyway. In his way to El Toboso, Don Quixote's niece, Antonia, caught sight of Sancho Panza and asked him about his uncle's whereabouts. Sancho ignored her, and as he was telling her about his task to find Dulcinea, Dulcinea appeared and asked him of the message. Sancho declared Don's love for Dulcinea and said he would lay down his life for her. Then suddenly, Antonia begged Dulcinea to help her have her uncle home. Dulcinea agreed and devised a plan to pretend to be a princess that needs protection. However, Sancho refused to help them and said his loyalty was to Don Quixote. Antonia questioned him and said, "If you really love my uncle, then you would think of his safety." Sancho agreed and they set off to Don Quixote. The plan was followed. Don Quixote pledged to protect his princess. But however, he swore to kill the sorcerer who destroyed her kingdom. Though was being persuaded to stay, he ran off to Toboso. Antonia, so worried of her uncle, went to her lover and told him of her wish to have her uncle home. He then promised Antonia that he would have him home. As the two were making their way to El Toboso, they came across a knight who called himself the Knight of the White Moon and challenged Don Quixote to battle. And whoever loses will have to give up his knighthood for a year. Don Quixote agreed, and the two went sword to sword. However, Don Quixote's body grew weak that he lost the battle. He stripped off his armor and kept his word, and there again lived his life as Alonso Quijano. As days had passed, Don Quixote's body grew weaker with every breath. His time was about to end, he said. Everybody said their love and farewell. Sancho called him Don Quixote, and he laughed, saying, "Wouldn't it be nice to have an adventure, even if it is the last time?" Sancho smiled and said, "I will accompany you all the way." Alonso Quijano has died, but Don Quixote's tale will pass on forever.
I, Don Quixote, the Lord of La Mancha. My destiny calls and I go